And no society is immune. What unites us here today is the search for an effective, innovative strategy that moves beyond the traditional response and reflects lessons from across the world. Each of our distinguished speakers will have about 7 minutes to share their perspectives, giving us a chance to hear their insights and depth, while also drawing connections across different regions and approaches. It is an honor for me to introduce them before we get started. Firstly, we have Dr. José Pedro Zúquete from the University of Lisbon, specializes in far-right and Islamist movements and how they fuel cycles of radicalization. Next, we have Mr. Abdullah bin Bijad al-Utaybi, writer and researcher, and Imam Mohammad Tawhidi of the Global Imams Council, is a reformist voice who challenges extremist interpretations and promotes dialogue and peace. We then turn to Professor Machmudi from the University of Indonesia, whose expertise lie in Islamist movements in Southeast Asia and strategies to counter extremism. And finally, joining us by video will be Dr. Orla Lynch from the University College Cork in Ireland.
So only 7 minutes. Okay.
Okay. To start off, we'll start with Dr. Zúquete. Your work has explored how far-right and Islamist movements provoke one another in dangerous cycles. Could you begin by sharing how you see these dynamics shaping Europe today?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the invitation. I initially prepared a 20-minute presentation, so I'll just, go with this. So, there are common patterns of extremism, ideological, psychological, and behavioral, that they set the stage for understanding how extremism can feed off itself in a cycle of mutual reinforcement, or what scholars call cumulative extremism. So a clear example is the dynamic between the identitarianism in Europe and Islamism in Europe. So the identitarian movement, which is a mix of intellectuals and young activists, has become a key player in Europe's far right. Over the past decade, it has shaped the immigration debate with two main ideas: the Great Replacement, the belief that Europeans are being overtaken by outsiders, and remigration. Remigration is the cure for Europe's problem. Send non-Europeans back to their ethnic countries of origin. For identitarians, Islamization is the tip of the iceberg called the Great Replacement. Martin Zellner, an Austrian identitarian leader, calls Islamization the Great Replacement on steroids. It is not just immigration, it's a cultural, demographic, and civilizational threat. So for identitarians, Islam is a totalitarian worldview. Islam is not just a religion, it's a totalitarian system, political, cultural, and religious, hell-bent on conquering Europe. To them, to identitarians, every mosque, every halal menu, every street prayer, in the end, is a step toward a great replacement of European culture. And here is the driving belief. There is no difference between Islam and Islamism. They don't buy the idea of a moderate Islam. It's all one unified danger to Europe's identity and survival. Identitarians view Islamism as Islam's true face, just louder about it. So Guillaume Faye, a major identitarian thinker, sees the idea of a peaceful Islam as a naive Western fantasy. To identitarian so-called moderate Muslims are just gradualists waiting to impose Sharia in a generation or two. The Muslim neighbor and the jihadists are playing the same game, just with different speeds. So, identitarians are fixed on historical continuity. They frame Islam's presence in Europe as a 1,000-year war from the Battle of Poitiers to modern Islamization via remigration. So what does this belief that Islam is Islamism mean for identitarians? It's the green light to act. They storm mosques, chanting Charles Martel, the victor of the famous battle in the Middle Ages. They march in the streets shouting Islam out of Europe. They push for remigration. And to them, these are defensive measures against a single, unified Islamic threat. Mosques, halal food, street prayers, Islamic holidays, all of these and others are signs of a great replacement that is swallowing Europe's identity. So there is the creation of a feedback loop. It's a cycle of cumulative extremism, where identitarians, anti-Islam, and Islamist actions mutually reinforce each other. Identitarians portray Islamization as an existential threat and use it to rally support to mobilize especially young people. Terrorism is a catalyst for identitarians. Islamic terrorist attacks, Paris, Nice, Berlin, Manchester, are seen by identitarians as proof of Islam's incompatibility with Europe. Identitarian actions escalate Islamist resentment and justify their narrative of Western hostility, handing radicals a propaganda goldmine. Finally, mutual victimhood narratives. Both sides feed off perceived persecution. Identitarians rail against accusations of Islamophobia as a tool to silence them, while Islamists weaponize the very concept of Islamophobia to portray themselves as victims, reinforcing jihadist recruitment. This creates a loop where each side narrative validates the other's worldview. Do I have 7 minutes left? Do I still have 2 minutes?
You can go ahead.
Can go ahead for 2 more minutes?
2 more minutes.
So there is a mutual reinforcement of extremism patterns. Ideological, psychological, behavioral. So what are effective strategies going to the end? First, we need to acknowledge that there is no silver bullet. There is no wonder drug for this condition. What is clear is our choice. Either we act now or face a future where polarization may rip apart European societies. So what is to be done? Asked Lenin one day. Usually the go-to political correct answer is a combination of promoting dialogue, implementing community programs, media campaigns, crack down on hate speech, monitor groups, etc. And this has been the official dominant approach by governments, NGOs, religious authorities, etc. This alone is not sufficient. De-escalating the vicious cycle of extremism between identitarians and Islamists requires hard-hitting practical strategies that confront the root issues head-on without sugarcoating or pandering. An effective strategy to de-escalate needs to be, in one way or another, connected to limiting mass migration to Europe. On one hand, it reduces the identitarian grievance. Identitarians see mass migration as the root of Islamization. Restricting it reduces the perceived demographic threat, undercutting their justification. On the other hand, it reduces Islamist leverage. Mass migration provides Islamists with a pool of disaffected migrants to radicalize, exploiting feelings of alienation, which is a known psychological trigger for radicalization. Limiting inflows shrinks this pool, weakening recruitment for potential jihad. At the same time, limiting mass migration has an ideological impact. It challenges monistic narratives, the identitarian invasion fears, and Islamist conquest goals. Of course, this must be paired with integration policies and even enforcing strict assimilation policies, language, laws, culture, without apology. As well, it must be complemented with propaganda takedowns. So, to conclude, curtailing mass migration hits the root of the cycle of extremism, which is real and perceived demographic shifts, starving both sides' narratives that are both ideological and emotional. It has the real potential to choke the oxygen of the cycle of cumulative extremism. Without it, my belief is that the spiral will keep spinning. Breaking this cycle demands ruthless clarity, dismantle propaganda, enforce strict laws against radical actions, and confront root causes like unchecked migration head-on. Looking forward, without this decisive action to starve both sides' narratives, Europe risks deeper division with extremism festering in the shadows of inaction. Thank you. Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you, Dr. Zúquete, on the European perspective. Now moving forward, I have a question. I will say this in Arabic. يميز الكثير من الناس في الغرب وحتى في عالمنا العربي بين الإخوان المسلمين بدعوى أنها تمثل الإسلام المعتدل والتنظيمات الأشد تطرفاً باعتبارها إرهابية رغم مشتركات العنف والإيديولوجية بين هذه الجماعات. في رأيك كيف يمكن تعزيز الوعي بعدم حقيقة هذه التميز وأن جميع هذه التنظيمات تتبنى العنف والإرهاب؟
نعم، أتمنى يكون الصوت واضح بس. فالسؤال مهم الحقيقة، والحقيقة أن كل جماعات الإرهاب المعاصر في شقه الإسلامي أو الذي ينتسب إلى الإسلام خرجت من رحم جماعة الإخوان المسلمين. إذا رأيت داعشيا ينحر إنسانا فاعلم أن خلفه سيد قطب أو خلفه القرضاوي أو خلفه أحد رموز الإخوان المسلمين. وإذا رأيت القاعدة تفجر فاعلم أن أسامة بن لادن كان عنصرا في جماعة الإخوان. وإذا رأيت أبو بكر البغدادي يقود داعش فاعلم أنه كان 10 سنوات وهو منتمي لجماعة الإخوان المسلمين. وقد ذهب مصطفى مشهور إلى بشاور لمقابلة أسامة بن لادن وقال له خرجت من إخوانك وتعود إلى إخوانك. لكن أنا أريد أن أتطرق لبعض النقاط سريعا في عنوان هذا المؤتمر المميز، الحديث عن التطرف الإسلاموي. نعم، نحن نعرف أن هناك تطرفات غير التطرفات الإسلاموية في كل مكان في العالم دينيا وسياسيا، ولكن نحن كمسلمين مسؤولون عن مواجهة هذا التطرف الإسلاموي لأنه ينتسب إلينا ويشوه ديننا. لكن سأختصر الكلام عن التطرف الآخر. في العصر الحديث، في التاريخ الحديث، كان هناك مراحل لأنواع متعددة من التطرف. مثلا كان هناك في الحرب العالمية الأولى تطرفات قومية، كان الاعتماد على القوميات شكل تطرفاً لكل شعب ولكل فئة، وقامت الحرب العالمية الأولى. والحرب العالمية الثانية كان تطرف الإيديولوجيات، كان صدام شرس بين الإيديولوجيات وقامت حروب ذهب فيها ملايين البشر مثل النازية ومثل الفاشية أو من الجهة الأخرى البلشفية. أيضاً أقدم من هذا من التاريخ الحديث التطرفات الدينية في الإسلام هذا المؤتمر يتحدث عن هذا والأغلب متخصصون فيه، لكن حتى في المسيحية التأويل وتحويل النصوص الدينية إلى نصوص متطرفة موجود حتى في إنجيل متى على لسان يسوع اللي هو عيسى عليه الصلاة والسلام، يقول: ما جئت لأنشر سلاما بل جئت بالسيف. هذا النص يبدو من ظاهره أنه يمكن بناء التطرف عليه، والتاريخ خير شاهد. الحروب الصليبية كانت مذابح ومجازر. اليهودية أيضا اليوم أوضح مثال 7 عقود من التطرف الشنيع جدا في خطاب الحاخامات الدينيين في إسرائيل، وفي الخطاب الصهيوني اللي هو الخطاب الأصولي اليهودي، مدى بعيد من التطرف. أيضا في هذه اللحظة المعاصرة هناك تطرف كما تطرق الدكتور، تطرف يميني في أوروبا ناشئ، ولكن هناك أيضا تطرف لليسار الليبرالي في الغرب منتشر هذه الأيام ويقود أحزاب سياسية كبرى، وهو التطرف اليساري الليبرالي الذي أتى بما كان يسمى بالربيع العربي والمجازر التي ذهب ضحيتها ملايين من البشر في مصر وفي سوريا وفي غيرها من البلدان العربية بدعم ورعاية كاملة من اليسار الليبرالي في أمريكا وفي الغرب. لكن هذا موضوع ثاني. أنا فقط أردت من استعراض هذا أن نقول أننا نعرف أن هناك تطرفات غير التطرف الإسلامي وعميقة وبعضها أخطر. المجازر التي تمت في أوروبا في الحرب العالمية الثانية أخطر من كل هذا الإرهاب، ولكن هذه اللحظة نحن كمسلمون مسؤولون عن مواجهة هذا النوع من الإرهاب الذي يريد أن يختطف ديننا. لا، أيضا هناك عبارة أو مفهوم تم صناعته صناعة كاملة في مطابخ جماعة الإخوان المسلمين، وهو مفهوم التطرف المضاد. التطرف الإسلاموي والتطرف ما هو لا يقصدون بهذا هذه الأنواع من التطرفات، بل يقصدون الخطابات الوطنية، الخطابات الثقافية المختلفة داخل الإسلام وداخل المسلمين، ويصنعون مفاهيم لخلق مثل هذا: العلمانية، التغريب، وغيرها من المصطلحات التي يريدون بها ضرب الآخر المسلم من خلال وصفه بتطرف مضاد. ولا لا يوجد تطرف، ولو وجد تطرف مضاد سيكون أفراد قليل وليس جماعات منظمة عسكرية ذات خطاب متماسك وأيديولوجيا قوية تريد أن تقلب أنظمة الحكم وأن تستولي على الشعوب. أيضا أريد أن أنبه على فكرة وحيدة وإن كنت أطلت ربما. هناك فكرة خطيرة جدا. كثير يعني من مراكز الدراسات ومن وسائل الإعلام ومن التي رأت بالذات مواقف الدول العربية التي صنفت جماعة الإخوان المسلمين جماعة إرهابية، فأخذوا يحرصون كل الحرص أن يقولون أن هذه الجماعة انتهت، هذه الجماعات ليس لها تأثير، هذه الجماعات نهاية الصحوة أو نهاية الإرهاب فارتخى القادة السياسيون وارتخت المؤسسات الأمنية في مواجهة هؤلاء. وهذه القاعدة هي قاعدة شديدة الخطورة. اليوم هم ينتشرون في كل مكان ويؤثرون في كل مكان، وهناك ريمونتادا بلغة الرياضة صحوية مرتدة في كثير من المجالات. الزعم بأن جماعات بنيت أفكارها ومفاهيمها وأيديولوجيتها على مدى 8 عقود يمكن أن تنتهي في 8 سنوات أو 8 أشهر، هذا خداع للتاريخ وخداع للشعوب وخداع للناس. إذا لم يعترف الباحثون والكتاب ومراكز الدراسات والجهات المسؤولة بأن هذه الظاهرة أخطر من أن تزال بقرار سياسي أو بمقال أو ببحث ينشر هنا أو هناك، تحتاج إلى استراتيجية كاملة لمواجهتها تمتد في الزمان في المستقبل وتمتد في المكان، بحيث يكون هناك تحالفات فعالة لمواجهة مثل هذه الخطابات، وشكرا جزيلا.
الدكتور عبد. شكرا أستاذ عبد الله العتيبي. Now we move to Imam Tawhidi. You have examined how groups like the Muslim Brotherhood distort religion for political ends. From your perspective, how can exposing those ideological roots help communities resist extremism?
Thank you very much to Trends Research and Advisory on the invitation. I wish you a successful forum. In the beginning, can I just comment on our dear brother over here with regards to the perceived immigration as invasion by Muslims who want to replicate what they believe begins from the Islamic conquests. It's always framed as though Muslim immigration to the West is a continuation of the Muslim conquests, and that is not just a lie and a fallacy, it is also dishonest in every level. Our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, was not a revolutionary person. He was a man with a message. And in the life of our Prophet, there was not a single conquest, not a single conquest. And what is attributed to him, the conquest of Mecca, was not really a conquest, because when the leading tribes of Mecca, Quraysh, submit to the Prophet, he automatically becomes the default de facto ruler. He is from Quraysh. He returned to his homeland. So the Prophet's from Mecca, he returns to Mecca, and the leaders, it was under tribal law, and the tribal leaders submit to the Prophet, and not a single drop of blood is shed. He immediately claims leadership. So he took what was already his in every single legal system, common law, international law, Islamic law, tribal law. He becomes the number one recognized legitimate ruler of Mecca. That can be called a conquest when we speak, but literally, legally, it is not considered a conquest. It was his right. He did not have to fight for it. A man returned home. And so it's very important that we make sure that our Prophet is not painted as a man who was roaming around nations with a sword, wanting to invade and conquer. The Prophet had a message of justice, of peace, of harmony, of knowledge, and primarily of Tawhid, monotheism. The Prophet was a man who invited people, who sent out letters, which means every single movement that claims to open lands and cities in the name of the Prophet in a way that is un-Islamic. We have a neighbor here called Iran. They have the system of Wilayat al-Faqih, where the supreme leader claims that God speaks to the Mahdi and the Mahdi appointed him. Nonsense. No one appointed anyone. That is a revolution that has nothing to do with the Prophet. A revolution that kills and hangs people, nothing to do with the Prophet. So this was just one example. The Muslim Brotherhood themselves, now I'm going to answer your question. The Muslim Brotherhood, in essence, is a revolutionary entity. It is not an Islamic school of thought. It is not a sect. It is an entity, an organization with its own charter. And I would dare say with its own Quran. في ظلال القرآن, in the shade of the Quran by Sayyid Qutb, is a book that has nothing to do with the genuine tafasir of Islam, neither the Sunni tafasir or the Shia tafasir. For the first time in a long time in Islamic history, we see a man who says, I will interpret the Quran based on my views, based on my logic, not based on its other verses, but based on a heavily politicized, revolutionary rhetoric. This was the first ever Quran. And so this belongs to the Muslim Brotherhood. The Sunni world does not claim it. because the Muslim Brotherhood are not a Sunni madhab. They're an organization like every other organization. Ali Khamenei, when he was in prison in the 1960s under the Shah of Iran, very interestingly, he ordered a book, في ظلال القرآن. He wanted to read it in prison. So the result of such a ideology is real. There's plenty of studies, countless studies have been done on the link between Shia revolutions and the Muslim Brotherhood, and that's a point I want to get to because it is my field. But I want us to take a step back. What makes the Muslim Brotherhood a real threat when we're discussing global experiences and examples? The Muslim Brotherhood is a threat because of the way the Western world is structured. It's a threat that is successful. Very rarely do threats garner so much success. The structure of the Western world is that policymakers, MPs, lawmakers, are elected for 4-year terms. 4 years and then there's another election, which means their thinking is in 4-year terms. They will think in 4-year terms. And usually in the last year, they hope to secure another 4 years and another 4 years. The Muslim Brotherhood that we see today is a result of 100 years of strategy and planning and infiltration and programming of communities. These people think in hundreds of years ahead. The Muslim Brotherhood is not in a hurry. And therefore, when you have such a mentality, showing up in the West and controlling the votes, vote banks, the Muslim vote is a powerful vote in the West. When the Muslim Brotherhood controls the votes, they begin to speak the language of the politician who only has 4 years and needs votes to get 4 years and needs votes to continue in their position. That's just one tactic. Moving forward, the Muslim Brotherhood is an applied ideology, and I want you to remember this. Underline this, it'll make life a lot easier for you. The Muslim Brotherhood is an applied ideology. You don't need to leave your religion to become someone who is convinced in the agenda of the Muslim Brotherhood. After October 7, the Muslim Brotherhood does not care about Palestine, they do not care about Gaza, they don't care about any suffering happening anywhere in the Muslim world. They only care about hijacking and making sure they make the most out of this conflict. So people were protesting for the Palestinians and for Gaza. Many people in these protests were atheists, Christians, non-Muslims, of all backgrounds, and some were just agnostic. You had so many political movements. You had the liberals with pink hair and blue hair and piercings, and you had the LGBT community and the disabled community, and the Muslim Brotherhood welcomed them all. The Muslim Brotherhood in the earlier panels were described, I believe it was on your panel, Brother Wa'il, they have links with the far right in Europe. In America, they back the far left. And it was in the administration of Obama and Biden, the two Democrats, that CARE, the Center for American Islamic Relations, which is bravely designated as a terrorist entity by the United Arab Emirates, they became advisors to the White House. But when Trump came in, they were kicked out. So they will work with anyone of any background, of any political orientation, because they are an applied belief system. You can be an atheist and be a friend of the Muslim Brotherhood and participate and donate and further their cause and platform them. You can be someone who is anti-Islam, anti-God, have books denouncing the existence of God. The Muslim Brotherhood does not care. They will use whatever they can, depending on the circumstance. I don't want to get into the sects of the Muslim Brotherhood and the different branches and how they operate, but there are two key components to what make it a threat. The monetary and the financing of the Muslim Brotherhood dominating halal certification industries, and also dominating the grants, the government grants. Governments give out money, and the Muslim Brotherhood have the best grant writers out there. And secondly, it is the reliance on no criticism. Not criticizing the Muslim Brotherhood allows them to operate freely and legitimizes them. In a democracy, to all of our Western friends, in a democracy, we need to be very careful how we approach the Muslim Brotherhood, because it's very easy that you will be accused of being anti-free speech and anti-free freedom of thought, and yes, they're dangerous, but they have the right to express themselves, whatever. The point is, when it comes down to incitement of terrorism and having a logo, a literal logo of two swords with the word wa'iddu, right? And other flags where you have the planet Earth, with your Muslim Brotherhood flag, piercing it, calling for a global caliphate to bring down democracies, you would be very foolish to continue platforming them. Very foolish to continue accepting their grant applications. There's more I have to say, but I'll leave it for later. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insightful responses. We now move on to Professor Machmudi. Indonesia has faced unique challenges at the intersection of history, politics, ideology. What lessons from Indonesia's experience can help us think about building resilience more broadly?
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Can I use to move the... Sorry. Yes. Yeah, okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening, I think. Thank you for inviting me. In dealing with the extremism, radicalism, and terrorism in Indonesia, actually there are two approaches, hard power and the soft power. So in Indonesia, we use smart powers, combination between hard and soft approach. A strategic combination of hard and soft power, because the balance short-term security with long-term prevention. So we are actually very much concerned about the long-term security issue, but also try to have the long-term preventions. So why it worked, the hard power? Because the hard power protects society in the short term, soft power prevent future radicalization and extremism, and to reduce both terrorist capacity and recruitment. So in Indonesia, we have two organizations dealing with those kind of threat. First, hard power, we have the detachment host. In Indonesia, host meaning khusus, or the special detachment 88 operation. Capture the terrorist suspect and bring to the custody, bring to the prison and other things. And also we have soft powers, the body, national body of prevention terrorism. This is, for instance, reform the curricula in the madrasa, community campaign about the dangers of the extremism. And actually we have the third body, it is the Minister of the Religious Affairs, regulating all the Islamic education. So we going to see the development of extremism in Indonesia, why it happened. So the rise of religious awareness amid the phenomenon of the injustice, national and the global. So there is kind of the rise of the awareness of religious among the youth. So the question is, might existing social religious, for instance, Nahdlatul Ulama, Muhammadiyah, or political institution, any political party in Indonesia, serve as the channel for alternative solution? Because the young attracted by so many problems, injustice, national and global, and they try to find another solution. So might the existing social, education, political party, the existing, can channel those problems. So If the answers no and they don't believe any kind of the existing institution, so that is become the problem, then we need to be aware. But if they say, okay, we have the poor problems, education, then go join the Muhammadiyah or Nahdlatul Ulama. If we have problem about the injustice in politics, then go any political party in Indonesia. But if you deny all, we don't need all those institutions, this has become the red line that we have to understand. The rise of the religious awareness is okay, but when we don't know how to channel them through the existing institution, this becomes the problem. So if not recognizing and rejecting the old Islam, so there is the new and the old Islam. We practice the old Islam and say this is not enough, so we need to, most people then adopting the new Shahada, the second Shahada, belong to the certain group, so we need to be aware about these things. And another piece is then denouncing other group as the infidel, rejecting the political system that applies nationality. This is the idea of the takfiri. And then go far to the extreme, life exclusively, and even move to the join. In Indonesia, we have the history of the Islamic State of Indonesia. This is the problem of the Darul Islam. In Indonesia, we fight against the Indonesia Islamic State for almost 15 years. In 1962, then we finished because we have the Pancasila, not the Islamic State. Then swearing allegiance to the transnational caliphate organization, Indonesian Islamic State joined the Al-Qaeda, then become the Jama'ah Islamiyah, or the Indonesia Islamic State and join the ISIS, then become the Jama'ah Ansarud Daulah in Indonesia. So those things, I think the Indonesian Islamic State after the 1962, then the Indonesia destroy all the organization and also capture the leaders. But at the time, the leader asked for the forgiveness from the government, and the government did not give the forgiveness. So the issue then, the new members still, campaign for the Islamic State. In 1980, 60, there is also the influence coming from Middle East. Let's say the idea of the brothers, then influence those old organizations. Then how to deal with the extremism based Indonesian experience? The holding belief, ideology, or behavior that go far beyond what is considered reasonable, acceptable, or mainstream, or often rejecting compromise and showing intolerance toward the differing views. It can appear in any religion, politics, ideology, or even cultural practice. So our effort is to strengthening a shared ideology. So the Pancasila is shared ideology, can be accepted by the secular, can be accepted by the Muslim, or let's say Islamists, can be accepted by the socialists, because the 5 principles is shared ideology. So the issue is, let's develop the nations according to your orientation, but we have 5 principles that no one can try to stray away from this principle. So right now, our President Prabowo have the new, it is not the new, the old slogans. Rather than using the nationalism, he used to the term patriotism. Because, nationalism, rather than nationalism, because the patriotism is an effort to avoid any confrontation among the different ideology or belief by fostering dialogue and mediation to build the trust. So the patriotism meaning that let's show your love to the nation. If you are Indonesian, so show your love to the nation. In Indonesia, we have, this is not hadith, but we believe this is part of the tradition. Hubbul waton minal iman, because but some group criticize this is not hadith, we don't know it, but this is part of our kind of compromise, say that hubul waton is part of the iman. If you are believer, then show your love to the country. So loving country and want to sacrifice under the name of our country. This is our country, not the Islamic State, but this is our country, so you have to share your love. So that becomes the share ideology. And the polarization, of course, is the source of the extremism. We don't want to, we are not winning the nationalists against the Islamists or vice versa, or winning the traditionalists against the Salavism, winning the local movement against the transnational, winning Sufi against the Shia. No, but we need to have the shared knowledge, we have to dialogue, and we have, to show our love to the country. So this is also a new issue about the self-delusion of the Jama'ah Islamiyah. 1990, through the Jama'ah Islamiyah is responsible for the Bali bombing. But in 2004, June 30, 24, they denounced itself dissolution of and declare loyalty to the Republic of Indonesia. This is part of the project of de-radicalization. But of course, someone said probably they just hide their identity, but that is also part of our program. So why did the Jama'ah Islami dissolve itself? There is kind of change, intellectual and ideology shift. Some leaders no longer believe the violent jihad against Republic of Indonesia was justified, because there is kind of dialogues between the official of Indonesia with this group, the former followers of the group. The influence of the more secular voice emphasizes peaceful da'wah and integration. So the issue of the integration to be part of our nation, it is very important. And internal reflection. Leaders cited deep reflection and recognition of the past mistake. Extremism have created more problem than solution. So this is also to admit that extremism is create problem than solution, and desire to adapt the changing reality and be accepted by Indonesian society. So let me conclude, the experience, a story from the former member of the Indonesian Special Detachment 88 Anti-Terror, when he, tried to approach the terrorists, captured by the Indonesian and responsible for the Bali bombing. He is the Christianity. He is the Christian. So it is very hard, I think, to persuade these terrorists. So they, according to him, the terrorists, they pursue death. They are willing to endure suffering and injury because they believe that being beaten by the police will raise their status. And surviving a police shooting will also raise it further. In seeking those outcomes, they render repressive measure ineffective. So if we suppress them, we give the heart, by shooting them, this will not, solve the problem. So what is he used the cultural approach when he said that when I asked him, the terrorist, how many children, and he had, and he fell silent, no answers, because they keep silent. He said that almost 15 hours, nothing say. But then he, asked again. Then he answers, I remember that when, this is the terrorist said, I remember that when I left home, my wife was pregnant, and I hadn't been able to contact her, afraid of our conversation might be tapped by the police. So the officer, then to break the silence, he offered to let him speak with his wife offered the phone, and he gave the phone to him. The moment he heard her voice, her wife's voice, and asked about his children, his expression softened. Then he began to open up to me. So there is kind of the cultural humanity approach, to this kind of the terrorist threat. So the conclusion, I think the soft power is more sustainable in the long term. Hard power is necessary for immediate threats, so we need to combine both hard power and the soft power. The best approach, smart power, firm enforcement and prevention, winning heart and mind, I think is key to defeating terrorism or extremism permanently. So this is kind of the experience of Indonesia. Probably it is good in Indonesia, but probably not in other countries. So this is the experience of Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Machmudi, for bringing in Indonesia's perspective. Finally, we have Dr. Orla Lynch joining us by video.
My name is Orla. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. I am sorry I cannot be with you in person. My name is Orla Lynch. I'm a psychologist and a professor at University College Cork in Ireland. In the years since 9/11, terrorism has been touted as an existential threat to the nation state, to liberal democracy, and even to civilization itself. Anxiety about the potential use of weapons of mass destruction by terrorist actors dominated our security planning in the early 2000s and featured heavily in academic analysis on terrorism and political violence. Suicide attacks were then a major concern, and so on. However, the conceptualization of extremism and political violence as an existential threat depends on the political mood, the nature of political leadership, and the occurrence of large-scale, one-off, spectacular attacks, rather than within-conflict atrocities. The obvious retort to advocates of this approach is to cite examples of causes of death that exceed the death toll from extremism, but this is of course missing the point. Terrorism's success is not about, as Jenkins said, the many dead, but in fact the many watching. And the power of terrorism is in the message and its ability to threaten, if not deliver violence to a particular population. After many years of attempting to understand extremism and a sustained academic effort to conceptualize the phenomenon, we now recognize that understanding terrorism, and in particular the impact of terrorism, is as much about the psychology of the audience and the politicization of the act as it is about the behavior of the extremist actor or group. Another issue that has stymied our understanding of extremism is the desire to establish a linkage or causality between factors, and to establish that a coherent ideology can be used to explain engagement in violence. We are increasingly aware that this is not the case, and ideology, if one can be identified, can be mixed, retrospective, and confusing, or even non-existent. Ideology can be compared to a horoscope, whereby individuals see what they want and choose what they want from the doctrine. And so in effect, it's a personalized framework that may or may not guide beliefs and behavior. While as researchers we spend inordinate amounts of time focusing on the message and relatedly the ideology, we spend less time on the audience and the relevance of the message across diverse populations. Understanding how the message resonates with audiences and how the message can be used to make meaning across very different groups of people is an important part of understanding extremism. The appeal of online influencers, the simplicity of their message, and their ability to tailor their appeal to certain demographics is all a key part of the extremist online ecosystem. This is a particular issue amongst those approaches that seek solutions for the counterterrorism field. In particular, the use of unicausal arguments and the aim to produce tools, for example, such as psychometric tests, in an effort to identify individuals involved in extremism. This is problematic given that extremism is a complex social phenomenon that can only be understood through reference to the entire extremism ecosystem. Also relevant to this is the fact that behavioural phenomena are not governed by linear means-ends connections. People behave in diverse ways for diverse reasons. Ideological triggers are not a guarantee of a certain behavioural outcome, and individuals consume information and make meaning of it in a myriad of ways. Therefore, seeking out definitive causal relationships between ideology and the individual may not be the most appropriate strategy for coming to know about extremism, particularly given the importance of context as a variable and the fact that chance and opportunity play a key role in individuals' involvement in political violence. In terms of a takeaway from this short presentation, I would like to suggest the starting point of extremism research is to focus on polarization. That is not to suggest that the two are linked in any contiguous manner, but that the ecosystem that thrives on polarization is the starting point for individuals and groups trying to make meaning of complex social changes. Thank you for your attention.
Since we are very short on time, and I would hate to not include this, but are there any concluding points from anyone that hasn't said their concluding points yet?
Imams always have points. I will just, with your permission, عن إذنك يعني إذا تسمح لي. عفواً أعتذر أطفل. Sorry.
Go ahead.
My mom taught me always be respectful to your elders. The Muslim Brotherhood is the mother organization. Now, the offshoots of the Muslim Brotherhood, I want you to remember this. They're always for sale. These organizations in the West, whether they be student organizations in universities, civil society organizations, they are always for sale. Iran pays not just Hamas, it pays even the Muslim Brotherhood organizations in the West. This is not about credibility because the Muslim Brotherhood does not care about credibility. It's more about who gets to what objective and what goal first. And look at every country leading the Western narrative, starting with the States, United States of America, Canada, down to Europe, in terms of global hegemony. You will see that the Muslim Brotherhood were there first. They learned the system. They have deep roots into every single parliament and every political party, whether it be through donations or through elected members that have shaped the identity of that party. But bottom line is they're for sale. And they should be exposed as such, as organizations for sale. There's another very important point that I will conclude with. We won't turn this into khutbah al-Jum'ah, right? I'll conclude. The United Arab Emirates has been the bravest when it comes to countering not just the Muslim Brotherhood, but every terrorist organization bringing nothing but evil to this region. And it has to be said, His Highness Sheikh Mohammad ibn Zayed is the nightmare of the Muslim Brotherhood. And everyone living here should be proud of that. What I would like to see is for the decision makers on foreign policy and national security to look at the sister organizations of the terrorist organizations they are designating. CARE in America is designated by the UAE as a terrorist entity. CARE has many sister organizations operating in Canada, operating in Brazil, in Latin America, in Europe, different logos, different names, same agenda, doing the same type of work and the same language. they too should be designated. And that's our responsibility to bring this out to the public so that we can point at the problem and identify it. I thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank all our speakers for your distinguished insights. And please join me in thanking our panelists one more time.
Thank you. Thank you.